For the first time in 20 years, there is evidence, promising evidence, that Google's market share is at stake. Does it really mean SEO is dying? Let's get into it. To understand what's exactly is happening, we need to understand the history of Google search and why Google search has actually dominated the search engine landscape over the last 20 years or so. So to actually summarize this, back in the day in early 90s or late 90s, search engines, they had a big problem. Just too many ads and so much features. They were barely a search engine. They were mostly directories. We had a few search engines though, such as Ultra Vista, but they had a very big problem because of the case that there were they relied heavily on keyword matching, meaning the more times you use a particular keyword, the more boost you will see as a result of it. The search engines back then, they were full of spam and garbage and gave a lot of rooms for spammers to be able to manipulate the algorithms quite easily by just repeating the same keyword over and over and over and again. But Google, they actually solved this problem by using the concept known as the PageRank. So PageRank relied on counting the quality and quantity of links pointing to a particular domain to figure out how often the page is talked about in different sites. And they took this particular algorithm as the main algorithm that Google was founded upon. But this has changed. PageRank initially worked really well to essentially rank the best web pages on the web. In fact, if you actually look at the graph of the most trusted sites on the web, which are the government sites, they're often linked more often than any other sites on the web, more spammy sites. But SEOs, because Google initially patented the PageRank algorithm, they gamed the system and they started buying links, selling links, and exchanging links together and even setting up bots to actually build links at a scale. And that was a problem for Google. So they integrated a concept known as NavBoost to figure out what users really want based on the click signals, based on the user interaction data, such as hovers, mouse movements, and clicks, and also duration of the clicks. So if a user has not bounced back to the search result, they will see it as a satisfied visit. On the other hand though, if the user was involved in bouncing back to the search result, they will took it as a sign of unsatisfied visit, and that particular URL may get demoted in the Google search result. And that was a big changer. NavBoost was a big changer. But starting the last couple of years, machine learning was introduced, and Google has started relying more and more on machine learning and letting the system to run the algorithm instead of the engineers. And that created a lot of chaos for the algorithm to be debugged easier. So search engineers initially, they handwrite the code and they test the code before they publish it. They do reviews on the code using the manual reviewers working as contractors with Google via third-party sources, really evaluate the usefulness and quality of the search results. So everything was written by engineers, tested via both live tests and also offline tests in order to figure out if the algorithm is actually functioning the way that it should supposed to work. But over the last 10 years or so, with the introduction of machine learning, this has changed. The machine learning has essentially is owning the engineering work at Google. Engineers, for sure, they still write codes, but the machine learning is controlling everything. And that's a problem. It makes things to be debugged harder and harder and harder. And in fact, there's a thread on Hacker News that confirms when machine learning was introduced, a lot of the bugs were not showing up in Google's metrics. And in fact, NavBoost system, which was gathers user data had a bug since 2015 that affected 15% of search queries, but that particular bug was not fixed until 2023. And you can certainly see the chaos that machine learning has introduced to essentially Google's algorithms. It makes things harder to debug and understand. And if a bug is happening, it affects millions of search queries, and it takes maybe months or years to debug them and fix them. So if you actually look for something on Google search now, everything is full with essentially sometimes low quality pages and big authoritative sites. SEOs are paying, search marketers are paying site owners that own trusted sites to get something spammy written on their blogs and on their site, and to get that published and to get that essentially to rank on Google search. And that's not good. And this essentially has made the quality of the search results way worse than it ever has been. And that's partially explained the initial decline in Google's market share, but that's not everything. Let's actually get into reason number 2 why Google's market share is declining. AI platforms. AI platforms such as AI overviews, which Gemini, ChatGPT, ChatGPT, people are using AI more often, which means, well, if more users are using AI to find the information they need, there will be less search queries and less clicks to sites related to informational queries. Now the AI is able to generate an answer based on the training data. And this is actually good and bad in its own ways. It's bad for Google search, and it's partially bad for the companies as well, that they relied heavily on traffic quantity as a way of monetization. Meaning there are some sites that were getting paid for ad impressions, so they'll be impacted significantly by this particular change in the landscape and the user behavior and the AI involving and becoming a big part of the internet. But that really doesn't mean brands will get affected by this, because brands will be able to shop effectively as long as they're known enough, they're well known enough, and they're trusted enough. They will be able to get featured in AI overviews. In fact, they will grow because no small company will be able to get featured easily in AI platforms such as ChatGPT or ChatGPT or AI overviews. So they will essentially grow, but small businesses, unfortunately, they will die. And that's not good. This is the reason number 2 why Google's market share is declining. AI overviews, ChatGPT, and just in the basic changes in the user behavior and what users would prefer in the landscape. Reason number 3. Back then, Google was simple. Google was easy to understand. You had basically links on the search results. You know what you wanted. You just search for something, you type in a query, and you find the page you're looking for. But now, well, everything on Google search is complicated. You search for something and you get some features that you may use or you may not use. And for most queries, there are essentially features associated and layouts associated with a particular query that makes Google more of an answer engine than essentially a search engine. This is exactly the reason why a lot of the Google's competitors in early 90s got bankrupted. They were just too complex. They were essentially directories. And as a result of it, Google has essentially came back to the business model of the search engines that existed in 90s. And back then, Google was so simple. No overwhelming number of ads, no extra features, just plain useful links to relevant search results. That's no longer the case. Another thing to consider, it takes many years for the user behavior to change and evolve. Meaning, even Google search gets broken up from Chrome, people will continue to use Google search. That's the way it is. It takes many years for the trust to be built and people just get used to using Google search. So I don't think within the next 5 years or so we will see a significant change in the landscape. The user behavior already has been built, but it will essentially over time, it may actually shift to other platforms as well. So just stay ready, but don't panic and do not worry. As the landscape is changing, there are things that you need to consider. If you're a search marketer, if you're a marketer, if you are manager of a company, or if you're an owner of a company, here are some of the things you need to consider. Try to diversify and invest money towards all marketing channels. So for example, before time, you may be spending every single dollar you had on paid ads on Google search, essentially AdWords, and also SEO. Now diversify that. Invest money towards all organic marketing channel, and whatever channels you see that there is a potential chance you may get some leads and revenue and even brand awareness from. But that's the most important step that we need to take in order to stay bulletproof. That really doesn't mean things have changed significantly compared to last year. Things have definitely changed, but we still see Google search is still dominating the market share. You still currently, the budget that you need to spend on Google search should be top on the list. But in order to stay bulletproof, we got to be open to the possibility of working across all marketing channels, making sure we create enough content for all marketing channels, and do the proper optimization for all marketing channels, not just Google. The second thing, also take consideration for becoming a brand, at least being well known in your niche and in your region. The reason is AI platforms, they prefer brands. They prefer the biggest, the top 5, top 10 biggest brands in your niche. So if you want to be really highlighted by AI platforms, there are a couple of solutions that you need to take into account. One is going to be reputation, how your reputation is presented in the web. And if you do have a poor reputation, AI platforms will probably not prefer for you to actually get featured in AI platforms. So make sure you review whatever other sites are highlighting about your brand. And if the reviews and feedback you see it's actually negative, make sure to work on it and get it fixed. The second thing is digital PR, not just for link building purposes, but to get your brand to go viral, for everyone to see your brand, to essentially create awareness about your brand, is going to be crucial if you really care about being featured in AI platforms, such as ChatGPT, SearchGPT, Bing's Autopilot, Gemini, and much more. Also, there is some evidence that AI platforms do leverage user historical data in order to train their LLMs. You cannot influence this so much. There are some potential chance of some people actually manipulating it right now. As far as I know, they haven't still built spam defenses around that. It's very gameable. But if you really care about the long-term success, don't consider that, at least. If you're trying to build something, a sustainable marketing channel. Another thing for Gemini, there is some evidence that Google does use historical user data in order to find the relevancy of the brands in Gemini and AI overviews. So the more data they have for your brand, the better it's going to be. So it's not all about the mentions and the press across the web. It's partially it, but it's not how they actually rank the brand. So for the ranking part, you really need to make sure you essentially, your site gets enough traffic, it gets a lot of branded searches in order to get featured for a particular AI query. And as always, have a great day. Feel free to subscribe, if you like the video, share with friends. And looking forward to seeing you next time. And have a great day.